Chapter 3. The Web of Deceit. The murder charge against Desiree Murray plunged Kingston's elite into a maelstrom of gossip and speculation. The once untouchable businesswoman was now the central figure in a sensational murder trial, her every past decision and relationship scrutinized under the harsh glare of public and legal scrutiny. Horace Sterling, her defense lawyer, faced an uphill battle. The evidence, though circumstantial, was stacking up against her. Gerald and King, however, were not entirely satisfied. While the case against Desiree seemed strong, Gerald's intuition, honed over decades of investigations, whispered a subtle discord. The crime, while seemingly straightforward in its execution, felt too neat. He couldn't shake the feeling that there were deeper currents at play, hidden beneath the surface of the Murrays' affluent lives. "Something still feels off, Andy," Gerald confessed to King over lukewarm coffee at a roadside stall. The scent of jerk chicken wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the grim reality of their case. Desiree Murray is sharp. She's cunning. If she did this, why leave her fingerprints on the weapon? Why not dispose of it entirely? It feels sloppy for someone of her intellect. Maybe she was desperate, Inspector. Or maybe she just underestimated us. Perhaps, but a woman like that, she plans, she strategizes. This feels more like a spontaneous act, covered by a hasty, almost amateurish cleanup. They decided to dig deeper into Paul Murray's life, beyond the initial inquiries. If Desiree wasn't the sole orchestrator, then there had to be other players, other secrets hidden in the shadows. They revisited his business dealings, his social circles, and even his personal eccentricities. Paul Murray, they discovered, was not merely a wealthy heir and real estate magnate. He was also a man who enjoyed intricate games, intellectual challenges, and, as some whispered, a touch of manipulative control over those around him. He had a penchant for collecting rare artifacts, including the various letter openers that had become a macabre focal point of the investigation. One of Paul's closest friends and business associates was Marcus Thorne, a smooth-talking developer who often partnered with Murray Real Estate. Thorne, a man with impeccable suits and an even more impeccable smile, had expressed shock and grief at Paul's death. But Gerald noticed a subtle flicker in his eyes, a guardedness that hinted at unspoken knowledge. "Mr. Thorne, you were a close friend of Paul Murray," Gerald stated during a follow-up interview. "Did he have any enemies? Anyone who might wish him harm?" Thorne chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Paul? Enemies. Plenty, Inspector. The man was a shark in business. Stepped on a lot of toes to get where he was. But to kill him, that's extreme." "Did he ever mention any specific threats?" "Not threats per se. More like heated disagreements. He was involved in a particularly contentious land deal recently, a large development in St. Thomas. There was a local community resisting the sale. Paul was pushing hard, very hard. This was a new angle. Gerald made a note to investigate the St. Thomas land deal. Could a disgruntled community member, driven to desperation, have sought revenge? It seemed a long shot, given the tight security at the Murray estate, but it was a lead worth pursuing. Then a surprising revelation emerged from Paul's financial records. While his assets were substantial, he had been making increasingly large and frequent transfers from his personal accounts to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The sums were considerable, and the transfers had escalated in the months leading up to his death. "What's this about?" King asked, pointing at the suspicious transactions. He was moving a lot of money out of the country. "Could be a legitimate investment," Gerald mused. "Or it could be hush money, or an elaborate exit strategy." They obtained a warrant to access the offshore account. What they found was not a surprise, but a confirmation of Paul Murray's darker side. The account was not in his name. It was in the name of a shell corporation, and the primary beneficiary was not Desiree Murray. It was Laura Thompson, a young, aspiring artist whom Paul had been secretly supporting for years. Laura Thompson. Gerald remembered her name from Paul's address book. She was listed as a mentee. They tracked down Laura Thompson to a modest apartment in Kingston. She was beautiful, bohemian, and visibly shaken when Gerald and King arrived. She admitted tearfully to having an affair with Paul Murray for the past 3 years. "He told me he was going to leave Desiree," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He said he loved me. He was going to set me up with my own gallery, move me abroad." "Did you know about the offshore account, Miss Thompson?" King asked gently. Laura nodded. "He told me it was for our future. He was planning to leave Desiree after the St. Thomas deal closed. He said he needed to make sure all his ducks were in a row." This revelation completely shifted the dynamics of the case. Paul Murray, the austere businessman, was leading a double life. He was planning to abandon his wife, take a significant portion of his wealth, and start a new life with a younger woman. So, Desiree wasn't the primary beneficiary of all his assets, Gerald stated, reviewing the new evidence. She would have inherited his legitimate estate, yes, but she would have been cut out of this offshore nest egg entirely. The motive for Desiree intensified, but it also opened up new possibilities. What if Laura, realizing Paul's death meant an end to her dreams of a new life and financial security, had been involved? Or what if Paul, a man known for his manipulative tendencies, had orchestrated a situation where Desiree would be framed? They brought Desiree back in for questioning. This time, Sterling was present, his usual bravado tempered by the unfolding revelations. "Mrs. Murray, we have discovered that your husband was having an affair with Miss Laura Thompson," Gerald stated, observing her reaction closely. Desiree's composure finally shattered completely. Her face drained of all color, and her eyes, wide with disbelief, filled with a fresh wave of tears. An affair? Paul? No, he wouldn't. He couldn't. Her voice was laced with a raw, agonizing pain. "He was planning to leave you, Mrs. Murray," King added, her voice unwavering. "And he was moving significant funds to an offshore account for Miss Thompson." Desiree stared at them, a whirlwind of emotions swirling in her eyes: betrayal, hurt, rage. The mask of controlled grief had been completely ripped away, revealing a woman utterly devastated. I had no idea," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He said he loved me. He said we were a team." Sterling, though visibly surprised by the revelations, quickly regained his composure. "Inspector, this is irrelevant to the murder charge. My client had no knowledge of this affair. Therefore, it cannot be considered a motive. On the contrary, Mr. Sterling. Ignorance is not always bliss. The discovery of such a betrayal could ignite a powerful rage, Mr. Sterling. Enough to commit murder." The revelation of Paul's affair and his plan to leave Desiree created a more compelling, more human motive for Desiree's alleged crime. The perfectly manicured image of their marriage had dissolved, revealing a web of deceit and betrayal that had ultimately led to murder. Gerald, however, still couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The sudden unveiling of Paul's double life, while damning for Desiree, also felt like a convenient distraction. He returned to the idea of Paul's manipulative nature. What if Paul had been playing a much darker game? Paul was an avid chess player, wasn't he? Gerald asked King. And he collected puzzles. Yes, Inspector. What's your point? My point is that he enjoyed intricate games. What if his death wasn't just a consequence of his actions, but a final twisted move in a game of his own design? The web of deceit surrounding the Murray family was growing larger, more complex. The affluent lifestyle, once a symbol of their success, was now exposed as a breeding ground for infidelity, resentment, and manipulation. The deeper they dug, the more secrets they uncovered, each one unraveling the perfectly woven fabric of their lives, inch by chilling inch. The murder of Paul Murray was no longer just about a wife's rage. It was about a life entangled in a dangerous, deadly game.